Hello, everybody. Today is January 26th, 2021, and today we're doing government and security news here on the L1 News.
This may be a final goodbye. I don't know. I have faith that there's probably a couple of landmines left behind.
Yeah.
And we'll see this name again. But maybe just, in memory and not. And of course, we will report as soon as he takes his comfy corporate job.
That's coming.
But in the halls of the FCC, not going to see this guy anymore.
Ars Technica reports that, hey, 3 meg uploads, that ought to be enough for everybody, says Ajit Pai in his final report. Now,
I like that they picked the douchiest picture they could find.
No, I think the Reese mug is much worse than this.
Has he ever taken a non-douchey picture?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever
The only
seen
way
it.
this could be worse is if he popped his collar.
Some of those where he's in court and he looks a little uncomfortable aren't as bad. When he's smiling, it's just like, your skin crawls.
He is the guy
There's
that
something inhuman there.
he is the guy that said that according to the law, your ISP has more right to block your right-wing tweets than Twitter.
So yeah, this is the old what is it, like 25-3 or something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, the international viewers, they constantly make the comments, and I don't blame them, because it is surprising when they're like, wait, you're the richest country in the world
And your internet's that terrible?
and I'm paying like $30 for gigabit fiber.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about they doubled my download, and I'm so excited. I'm at 225. So, good riddance. And who will step up? Now, this is not Biden's appointee, but Pai didn't even write it out. He was just like, yeah, okay, guys, I get it. I'll be over at the Verizon building.
But that report that we just talked about, he shouldn't have submitted that. He should have let the incoming team do that. But he's like, nah, I got this.
Oh, he's such a go-getter. But anyway, somebody has to step in and fill the chair shoes until they appoint the new one. And it's none other than the name that we always list as being anti-Pi.
President Biden names Jessica Rosenworcel as the acting FCC chair. She's known for supporting net neutrality and increasing broadband access.
Is this the best picture they could find?
Yeah, so this isn't a great photo of her either. What are the editors doing this week?
Maybe they don't like her. Maybe they're big Pi fans.
Now, I will point out, though, that we're already off to a misstep here, because the very first thing that she said is like, oh, we've got a homework gap. We've got to think of the children. And mentally, I'm going to teach you a trick. You should always, anytime you hear think of the children, mentally replace that with don't think about it.
Yeah, this is going to be a disaster because, it's just like, anytime you have that majority,
Yeah.
and it's a 7-person team, or is it 5?
I think
It's an odd
5.
number.
Yeah.
So you always have a majority. But it's just going to be bad in the other direction.
If they say don't think about it, that's the thing you really need to put more thought than usual into. It's like there's something nefarious going on here if you're asking me not to think about it.
How about she said, let's talk about the children instead of let's talk about 25 megabits. Because that should be the elephant. The elephant occupying 99.9% of the room. That's what that should be.
Maybe she thinks people don't understand megabits, which is, again, the commentary in and of itself.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it depends on what audience she was targeting with some of her comments, because most people would be like, what does that mean? But they do know when they sit their kid down to do their work at night, and it's like, oh, it takes forever to submit an assignment. They do know that sucks.
So based on that analysis, Krista, what she should have, her first sentence would be, do you want to get your porn faster? And everybody would have like, what? Oh, I'm listening.
Do you want to stream Overwatch with no loss?
And alongside Pi, Donald Trump is out. He will no longer haunt the White House, but he did have that whole week to do a bunch of stuff, and he did a bunch of stuff.
Trump seeks to curb foreign policy, cyber meddling in the last day in office. So they rushed through a bunch of agreements with a bunch of different governments that was basically like, hey, don't do this. And we promise not to do this either.
So if you do, like, a lot of people will rent out cloud hosting that's based in the U.S. to kind of whoever. They're not really worried about it. What do they call that when the web hosters do that? Bulletproof hosting?
Yeah,
It's kind of like that.
Bulletproof is a code word for we'll try to evade law enforcement for you.
So this clamps down on that so that the powers that be can go after the route provider rather than having to chase down somebody who's not even in this country.
We may be seeing more about that next week with the return of Parler on some Russian services.
For a while there, it seemed like Trump was a little too busy with his personal problems to go after China. But I think after everything sort of washed out and he accepted his fate, he remembered that China was on his list.
Trump admin slams China's Huawei, halting shipments from Intel and others, according to sources. So this is Reuters. There's a list of companies here. It's not just Intel. So Intel's not allowed to sell not only to Huawei, but subsidiaries that were supplying Huawei. So the State Department knows. They know who's in bed with who. And that has been blocked. And of course, in response, the article mentions China's responded, and so they've blocked some stuff. Curiously absent is they've not blocked imports of Trump-owned companies.
I think he'll go over there and start over. Was it all just a big ruse, his fight with them? It really is pro wrestling, is it? And the Capitol attack still getting big headlines, and we're kind of slowly uncovering through the obvious surveillance nightmare that the Capitol is exactly who was there. But that's not the only way.
It's social media metadata. U.S. panel seeks FBI, or U.S. panel asks the FBI to review role of Parler in the January 6th Capitol attack. That's really pretty much, there's not really a lot to this story.
That's it.
I'm pretty sure they're already on the task too, judging by the wanted posters that have been coming out daily, which is like, we took this one guy from all these different videos, and here he is from like 17 different angles. Does anybody know who he is? And they're having a really good success rate tracking those people down.
I saw one guy who was there. I guess he threatened his family and was like, "I'll kill you if you tell them." So I think, considering that's a headline and I know about it, I think they found him.
I think they found him.
Some of those cases might be a little thin, though. I think they're kind of just doing whatever they can to round those people up and get them in, sit them down in a questioning room.
Yeah.
But in some cases, the proof, it's a little light.
Capitol riot suspect plotted to sell stolen Pelosi laptop to Russian intelligence, authorities say. So there's a lot here. This is just, yes, this actually really happened. It was Pelosi's aide. It was one of her aides or something, I guess. And this never really got off the ground, but that's kind of messed up, don't you think?
Well,
it's like, oh my gosh, our democracy here is so messed up. I need to mail this to a foreign intelligence service who will be the champion of American ideals?
The American people? Yeah.
But here's the thing. Riley Jim Williams was turned into the FBI by a former romantic partner. Could there be a motive there? The laptop's not been recovered.
Yeah.
No one knows where the laptop is. She claims she doesn't have it. Never did.
Wow.
I don't know. There probably is some footage, but I don't know if they've actually proven that it's her yet.
Oh my gosh.
What do you think a Russian would pay for a Pelosi laptop?
They probably already got it. Probably already got all the info.
Well, what's the price?
$5,000.
That's
really?
not even
You
to
don't
cover
think they would want
shipping.
more?
Yeah, I don't think it would be more. If you'll recall back to, I believe, 2012, there was an interesting case, and it was pretty well proven. I don't think even Apple at that time wasn't really fighting it too bad, but it had to do with ebook price fixing. Remember when Apple was the big ebook leader and everybody was reading on their iPads and stuff like that? Well, that case has some eerie echoes to this one. And by that, I mean, it's exactly the same. That's a short memory.
Amazon.com and the big five publishers are accused of ebook price fixing. Class action lawsuit filed in the U.S. claims the houses have colluded with the online giant to keep prices artificially high. Immediately after the earlier ruling that Ryan was talking about, ebook prices went down because turns out people, if the price is equal, people would rather have the dead tree format. So what's happening is the ebook price is the same as the dead tree format, and the dead tree format gets more expensive. But, after that ruling, the last ruling, not this one, ebook prices went down.
You can almost always get a used copy for half the price of the ebook, which makes no sense.
If you can get a good used book supplier, yeah.
The drone deliveries have been promised. When did they start promising those? Like 2-3 years ago?
I think like 10 years ago.
and we start to, well, I mean, but realistically, like they actually had the technology, but it wasn't the technology that is kind of there, I would say right now, but the regulation has to catch up. And it seems like maybe this is we've had a lot of first steps, I guess, maybe the first full step, not just a baby step.
The FAA has approved a fully automated commercial drone flight, or flights for one particular company, I guess ABC News. This company has, I guess, been able to demonstrate a commercial drone that can fly autonomously, avoid obstacles. It is limited to no more than 400 feet off the ground and a maximum takeoff weight of about 20 pounds. So can schlep around, 10, 15 pound packages at the most.
And only rural areas.
Yeah.
If you're not sure if you live in a rural area, just look for drones. Unmanned drones.
I thought you were going to say cows, but I mean, drone works.
And we have an update in the Florida debacle, which was the whole pandemic scientist being fired.
They've arrested a scientist.
Starting her own. Well, they arrested her once. Now they've arrested her twice.
Arrest warrant issued for ex-Florida data analyst Rebekah Jones, the former manager of her, dashboard for the thing that we can't say because of the algorithm. She's going to turn herself into the authorities. The state would not say what charges she faces. I'm pretty sure that that's not actually constitutional.
So they won't say what charges she faces, but they did confirm. Now, I think they told her this, so we are taking her word for this. Might not be true. That these are not charges related to the warrant.
Yeah.
So you seized something via warrant and then found something unrelated. Is that even legal?
We're going to find out.
Because warrants, I mean, they've trampled all over the Constitution, but the warrant is supposed to have a very clear scope of this is what we're looking for.
Yeah, they did not wait they were supposed to wait for a data analyst or a neutral third party or whatever to separate out the stuff on her electronic devices for what was in the scope of the warrant and everything else because privileged communication with her lawyer was there. They did not do that. She also sued the government for the return of her stuff because this was apparently a civil case. It was a civil case. And they got a warrant, and the judge was like, you can't execute a search warrant on a civil case. It has to be a criminal complaint. So the next day, they had a criminal complaint based on evidence they collected from the civil warrant. So she also doesn't live in Florida anymore, so she had to go back to Florida in order to deal with this. Now, they said that they've got evidence that since she's been arrested, they've released the thing, I guess. They said that they've got evidence that her devices or her computer or something was one of the things that accessed the message board she wasn't supposed to. The same one that the password was posted online, and that she also downloaded a spreadsheet from that.
I think they couldn't prove that, though.
Well, the most recent up-to-date one said that it's one count of accessing something you're not supposed to access.
But it's not that. According to her, it's something else. So I think she might have downloaded something else. And that's what they're going to try to get her on. Anyway, it's ridiculous.
It does seem. I mean, if the scientist has already moved out of the thing, seems like has Florida solved its murder problem? I mean, come on, this is a waste of time.
Oh, you mean like? So you're saying if somebody's already on the way out, don't bother?
Yeah,
like an impeachment.
Yeah.
So if you live in Germany, or perhaps France, Sweden's a rich country, right?
Are you thinking, you get them mixed up, or are you thinking Sweden or Switzerland? I think they both are rich.
They're both rich. Anyway, if you live in one of the more, well-developed, richer countries of the EU, here's some great news for you because, those really cheap Western European video games? You're going to get so many of them.
Valve and 5 PC game publishers have been fined $9.4 million for illegal geo-blocking. So this is the European Union. Now, the European Union said that the 5 publishers cooperated with them really well, so they reduced the fine. But Valve did not cooperate, so they got the maximum fine. Valve, of course, said, no, we cooperated fully. What do you mean we didn't cooperate? Are you insane? Valve says this is going to lead to arbitrage, where people buy a game in one region and then resell it in another. And there's nothing in the law that can stop them, which will mean that game publishers will just sell their game at one price across the entire European Union.
Imagine that. Imagine an item just having a set value and not as much as the market will bear. And speaking of valuations, oh boy, did this one drop so much. But I suppose if you are friends and family of this gentleman, you're just happy that he's actually not dead or in prison for the rest of his life.
Ant Group's valuation seen dropping to 108 billion on Crackdown. It had previously been valued at what, like 144 billion?
I think it was two. The IPO was going to be two something.
He was not Jack Ma, the Ant Group, the leader. He was not towing the line.
I bet he will now, though. And he is back. He made his first public appearance last week in 2 months. So he's not dead.
That's good.
But
Was he talking about the glory of China, or?
I think he was just, like talking about the future because they're probably going to split up his empire.
Do you think, do you think he survived unscathed, or is there some darkness that we don't know about? Like, he lost his beloved pet beagle, or
his feet are just burned and blackened.
Mm.
Oh, he's limping everywhere.
You do the whole like batteries and socks kind of thing. It's like, oh, you can't see those injuries quite as readily.
Do you think it would be a point of pride if you were a bigwig in the CCP and you're the guy who got Jack Ma's kidney?
Jack Ma's punishment is he gives one of his kidneys to the guy that sold his iPhone, or kidneys for an iPhone.
Like Jack Ma may be a good businessman, but his kidneys, those are an unknown. Are they any good?
I mean, he's an older guy, but no, it's not about the function of the kidney. It's just about flexing on everybody that you've got the richest man's kidney. He's not above you because you're CCP power. This one's an interesting story because you got to think, if we had GDPR, how many companies would immediately be violating this?
A lot.
How would every retail store not be?
I expected something completely different when I read the headline, and I read this, and it's like, this sounds perfectly normal. Oh no, have they gotten to me? They've changed my brain, and I didn't realize.
I agree that it is an invasion of privacy, but what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Because this is, you can lose a lot of money here.
ZDNet has the headline, GDPR, German laptop retailer fined 10.4 million euros for video monitoring employees. And so I thought this was something like they had video going in the bathroom or something like that. No, they were refurbishing laptops and other hardware, and sometimes that hardware would just disappear. So they're like, all right, let's put cameras up in the work area where people are working. And that's a GDPR violation, apparently. I really would have loved some more details on this, but I just don't see that as entirely unreasonable.
Well, the way that they put it, the regulators or whatever, is it wasn't anything more than that, but that's just not allowed.
Yeah. So how are you going to do inventory control or asset control? I mean, maybe the people in Germany are on balance much more honest than most other people, but
absolutely not.
The people that I've met that are in certain industries that would be doing this kind of thing, or
I'm sorry, Kristen.
I guess you could do like a check-in system where it's like if you're in the back room, like you have like a key card or something, so they always know who was in and out. But you'd still have to check like the inventory too.
It's Krista. It's almost like you didn't read the story because they pointed out that bag checks, if they had been implemented, would have actually helped them because you need to be able to prove that you took all the measures that you could before you resorted to cameras.
That seems like that would be I guess maybe not the easier solution because you have to make an ID badge for every employee, but...
Yeah, the guy this is not a huge company, it doesn't seem like. And the guy was like, I don't know what to do here. This is a standard security system. We're not like analyzing the data. We're not doing facial recognition. We're just literally trying to keep the laptops. That's all we're trying to do. I don't understand.
We had 10 laptops to refurbish. We refurbished, and now we have 8 laptops. What happened? Oh, I can roll back the tape and see what happened because there's been an incident.
So this could be the first instance, or at least the big instance that we've talked about of GDPR overreach going into kind of satirical levels.
I also thought that this was maybe precipitated by some kind of event, like, something other than laptop theft, because it's like, we fired somebody because they're always goofing off at work. How did you know they were goofing off at work? Oh, we reviewed the video. Okay, maybe something like that would be a GDPR violation. But no, this was just, I don't want to be filmed.
Well, they also pointed out that if there had been something, like if laptops had gone missing, and then they put the cameras in response to that, then maybe that would have been okay. but you just can't do preemptive cameras, which is such a weird. I imagine that legislation is, one of those 10 million pages, and a good
With every
lawyer,
edge case outlined.
yeah, and a good lawyer could pick it apart. But who knows? It's a weird thing to go after, but there are a lot of things that the government should go after, and maybe finally they're looking at this one. Now, I put this in the government section because this is discovery from the big investigation that the government is doing.
Remember that Google has been sued? Uh-oh. Behind a secret deal between Google and Facebook? Facebook was going to compete with Google for some advertising sales, but backed away from the plan after companies cut a preferential deal, according to court documents. So yeah, Google and Facebook got together. It's starting to make sense why we're starting to see more disgruntled employees out of Google, doesn't it?
So they had this, I don't know how clear you guys are on the advertising model, but it's a bidding model. So when a search result triggers one of your keywords, you go into an auction, it's all automated, against everybody else who wants to advertise for that keyword. And if you outbid them, you get it. So Google had that system, and then there was a competing system that was really, really pushing Google out because Google wasn't in your best interest. And this new system was doing that. And Google got wind that Facebook was going to go in that new system. And they're like, no. And they met with Facebook, and suddenly Facebook didn't join that system. Google invented a new system where they got a commission out of every auction.
That's not anti-competitive at all.
And that's
just good business.
They uncovered an email where one of the Google engineers was like, this is an existential threat. And then they uncovered a Facebook one where they gave him the options, and the options were like, go with Google, spend billions and billions, or go out of business. Zuckerberg chose go with Google.
Yeah.
The WhatsApp fallout, we learned, is continuing to rage. And it seems like, week after week, just like all the other big tech debacles.
That was last week.
You get a new entry. Yeah, a new outraged person steps up. This time it's India.
India asks WhatsApp to withdraw a new privacy policy over grave concerns. So they have, but we're going to read more about that in the business section. And it's only temporary.
And WhatsApp is so ubiquitous in India. Everybody's using it. So it makes sense.
WhatsApp, I would characterize the reaction from the India article as basically like, we were kind of already doing this. We're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on letting you know that we're doing this because effectively we're already the same company. But I mean, okay, I guess we can delay that policy.
Yeah, I don't think the Indians are going to give it up unless they ban it.
Yeah,
I guess they have banned a lot of stuff though. That's not a non-trivial threat. And in Turkey, they are showing off perhaps how quickly the danger of this whole deplatforming and that type of thing. Because when you're a big tech company and you take this kind of control, you piss off the people who already have that much control. And they don't like it.
Turkey has slapped an ad ban on Twitter under new social media law. So the headline talks about Twitter, but this actually affects Twitter, Facebook, and they were even talking about Google. But Google is going to play along. Google already has somebody on the ground in Turkey to handle everything on a case-by-case basis. Twitter and Facebook were not willing to put somebody on the ground in order to make things how the people in Turkey want it, or how the ruling class in Turkey wants it.
I thought Facebook did.
It says Twitter, Periscope, and Pinterest.
Yeah. Facebook did.
Okay.
So Facebook and Google both sent a liaison to Turkey to be the person that all the banned stuff goes through. But Google said, we are sending our person, but we will not let them affect our service. So there's heads are going to butt at some point there.
Yeah, but that's more cooperation than Twitter gave them.
Twitter did nothing. Yeah. So Twitter can't run ads, and then there's like a period where they are going to revise it again, give them another chance, and then they might shut them down.
Was this the one where they were also going to do the bandwidth limiting?
Yeah, in May, they get knocked down to like 50%.
Yeah. So Twitter's going to be real slow, which is an interesting mechanic, I think, for them to try to deal with this. Because if the site's down, they'll just work around it. But if it's slow, most people might not realize. It's the old Netflix switcheroo that Comcast did with Netflix. Oh, it'd be a shame if something happened to your packets. They didn't block Netflix. They just slowed it down.
Which is worse, if we're being honest.
In Iran, you might have to worry about something a little worse than slow Twitter. You might have to worry about rolling blackouts, having a bit of a tough time keeping the lights on. And a lot of people in Iran are saying that it is the corrupt government and horrible unmaintained infrastructure that's the problem. The government has a different story.
WAPO says that the massive blackouts that have hit Iran, that's the Bitcoin mining. Oh, the Bitcoin mining has created unprecedented demand for our electricity. No, what are we going to do? It's not the Bitcoin.
They have subsidized electrical power in Iran. It is way cheaper than it ought to be in a desert.
But they've got so much oil from which to generate said electricity.
You think the oil price is about to go back up?
Oh, man, if only they had some nuclear material that they could use for, energy generation.
I'm a little concerned about that pipeline, considering the 11 liters of displacement that's in my garage. I don't want to pay $4 for gasoline. Hungary. You don't hear a lot of tech headlines out of Hungary, but they are stepping up, and it seems to be, along with Merkel and who was the other one? Poland.
Poland, yeah.
I think France was in on it. These are leaders who are a little more right-wing, and they're feeling the heat of all this deplatforming stuff.
Hungary mulls sanctions against social media giants. So the Hungarian Justice Minister Judith Varga, hopefully I said that right, on Monday raised the prospect of sanctioning social media firms over what she called systematic abuses of free speech. So this is the banning and the deplatforming and all this other kind of stuff. They haven't taken any specific action. They're just saying, hey, you're on notice.
Yeah, it's definitely a threat.
Oh, no.
If you're, it really is unprecedented that we took away the president's nuclear capabilities with no lawful reason to do so. So I understand, leaders having a bit of trepidation there.
If they had impeached him, they would have had a legal reason to take away his nuclear codes.
I thought they were moving forward with that.
Oh,
in the
yeah,
Senate.
but they hadn't by the time they had done that.
Yeah.
And over in Korea, they've got their own corruption. But the thing about Korea that's kind of unique, well, I don't know how unique it is. Maybe our tech companies are just more varied. We have more of them. But they really only have the one powerhouse. And oh boy, is it in charge of everything. But they are trying to fix that, it seems.
Samsung heir Lee Jae-young is sentenced to 30 months in prison in bribery case. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, wasn't he sentenced to 52 months like a couple of years ago? Yes, he was. He was sentenced, and he was in jail. He served about a year, and then he got out because he had appealed. This is the result of the appeal. So the appeal has upheld the conviction, but they did reduce his sentence, technically. So he's got to go back to jail.
And he can't make any major decisions about Samsung during that time. So.
Do you think, is it like hardcore prison or is it like rich people prison?
Sounds like rich people prison.
I don't know what Korean prisons are like in the first place. Some of those international prisons are actually pretty nice. Imagine being his cellmate. You got packages coming every day. Probably eating caviar.
Playing tennis. Out in the yard.
Croquet. All right. Hacking. The interesting thing about hacking is we learn more and more how the hackers are taking advantage of things that you might not think about. Like if you walk into an airport, does this ever enter your mind? But it's a threat. Probably not a threat for you and I, but a high profile person who might need to go somewhere and have the world not know about it. Ooh.
A Chinese hacking group is stealing airline passenger details. Chinese hackers are gathering passenger details from airlines across the world to track high-value targets' movements. So don't fly commercial, I guess, is the lesson there.
How nervous does this make you for Computex this year, Wendell?
It's fine.
You think
you're a high-value target?
Not based on the class that I fly.
You've said some things about Jinping.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean, it doesn't take a lot.
Well, if there is it's usually a direct flight, so I should be good there. But the only time that I've done layovers through Japan. So
Does it fly over the South China Sea?
oh no! Oh.
You think they'd risk an international incident to silence you?
I don't care about the rest of the people on that plane. I just want the guy from Level 1 text.
Moving on to security, the SolarWinds thing, as expected, just keeps bearing more and more terrible, rotten fruit.
Malwarebytes said it was hacked by the same group who breached SolarWinds. Now, this is a little bit of a sensationalist headline. They got into a tiny corner of Malwarebytes online Office 365 using some of the access, I guess, they gained. They didn't really seem to do much other than mess around with some of the auth tokens. But this is something Malwarebytes used internally, not their customers. So this could have been bad if it hadn't been noticed, and it was not noticed by Malwarebytes until they were auditing their use of SolarWinds, which they don't actually use extensively, but it was used in one edge case.
I think Microsoft had some kind of internal abuse flag that went up. So they did get the emails, but I don't think it was anything super important. Although if it was, would they tell us?
Yeah. Seemed to be sales-related stuff.
And if you are someone who runs a network and you are stressing because we don't really know what's going on with the SolarWinds stuff, are you affected? Well, luckily, now there's a tool.
FireEye, they've come to our rescue, has released a tool for auditing networks and techniques used by SolarWinds hackers. Azure AD Investigator is now available via GitHub. I was looking into this. I was surprised. I learned something I didn't know, which is like the ADFS. I think it's ADFS. I'm trying to... a little spacey this morning. I haven't had a lot of sleep. The ADFS key, like when it rekeys, you can still use the old key until it rekeys again. So you need to issue 2 successive rekeys to get all the old keys out of there. Because even after you rekey, the old cert will still work until you rekey a second time. It's a feature. It's not a bug. Good stuff.
And FireEye has also released what they believe to be the series of events that led to the breach, and it was very complicated.
Yeah.
That's a lot of steps. That was an impressive attack, assuming they got it right. If you are into modding your router, bad news.
OpenWRT. Oh no, the forum user data has stolen in a weekend data breach. That's one of the oldest forums. I mean, that goes way back, over 10 years. OpenWRT is a long-lived project, so there's a lot of data in there.
Unfortunate. Going to change those passwords. I got to, how your credit cards and your bank will warn you when your email pops up on a dark web breach.
Mm-hmm.
They breached, there was one that just happened that was from 2008.
Wow.
It's like all that old data is out there somewhere and somebody finds it. They're just sifting through it.
Wow.
Apple had a little bit, this is not really security, but kind of is. It's, let's say that this was a tiny gap in one of the walls of the garden and some voles and mice and maybe like a wolverine or two.
I thought this was a nice feature, not a bug. We can enjoy nature.
No, you can't have anything in the garden.
They dispatched the garden assassins. Apple pulls the plug on a user-found method to sideload iOS apps on Mac. So the new M1 Macs can run iPad applications natively, but your application developer has to okay that in their build. Well, this sideloading technique would let you sort of ignore what the developer wanted and load the application on your M1 Mac anyway. Well, Apple has promptly closed that. It's really frustrating.
How sad.
You know, if you do Xcode development, you also can't sideload applications inside the simulated device, which is beyond frustrating. Like, do you know how handy it would be to load Google Chrome inside a simulated iPhone? But Apple, in their infinite wisdom, does not allow this.
Do you know how much terrorism could be accomplished with that?
I know. It's just...
We talked recently about the Microsoft Teams and their little dashboard that they had that basically just spied on employees and gave them a nice little, it's like, oh, you can just look at everything here. It's a nice little dashboard.
And remember when they turned that off and we said they didn't turn it off, they just rolled it back, or they rolled back the visuals?
Well, they didn't turn it off. They changed it a little bit. But now someone at ZDNet has actually gone in and looked at everything, and oh boy.
I looked at all the ways Microsoft Teams tracks users, and my head is spinning. Microsoft Teams isn't just there to make employees' lives easier. It's also there to give bosses data about so many things. Yeah, so all of that the stuff that we reported on, it's all still there. It's just a little bit harder to get to. They didn't turn it off. So you can use Teams to really, really monitor employee productivity.
And there was more pointed out in this one
Yeah.
than we knew before. So basically, it's basically spyware.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the picture they have, like, in the header of this, I've never seen someone's webcam look that good on Teams. Never. And usually, like, you can hear an air conditioner and their kids screaming in the background. Like,
Nobody's using RTX voice.
yeah, it all sounds terrible.
But the bottom right, she does have like some bottles and stuff in the back. She's the only one that looks like she's in a realistic scenario. Also, look at the perfect depth of field on these two.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Definitely
Your laptop
not shocked.
camera's not getting that.
Oh no, is it frozen?
Oh,
no.
Video driver.
We've got one more story. One more.
Okay. Are we? Oh,
We're back.
you might have seen some quick transitions there. I apologize, but the video driver was dying.
Ubuntu is ready to report a problem.
Oh, Ubuntu. Good job. And our final story, this is an interesting one because, again, out of Florida, it definitely seems like Florida is taking a different approach to the pandemic. Universally.
A unique approach.
You may have been clued into that with the arrest of the data scientist that's living in another state now.
But the University of Florida is very serious about getting back to school and getting back to normal. So serious that they've built an app.
University of Florida asked students to use an app to report professors who don't teach in person. It's like, are you a professor? We're telling you to teach in person. They're like, I don't want to teach in person. I take care of my elderly mother. It's like, too bad. You need to teach in person.
So if you don't teach it, if you scheduled your class as in person, I think you can still schedule as not in person, but they discourage that. If you schedule it as in person, you don't show up, then your narc students can flag you.
Do you think that that's a sign that the University of Florida is part of like big education, like the for-profit education, and they're addicted to those student loan dollars, and they're maybe more concerned about that than an education?
You're just describing any university, not just University of Florida.
First of all, there's no question about it. And second of all, they're not unique. They made a whole quote. It's like, our first focus is on the students. That's like,
The customer. Not the student, the customer.
That's accurate. The quote is just cut off. Our first, it's the students' money. And the students are more happy to spend money if they get in-person instruction.
But in a lot of cases, it's not even the students' money. It's the taxpayers' money. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, student loans survive bankruptcy too, so.
Yeah, but
you can't discharge those.
But I'm saying that the university gets their money.
Yeah.
And then somebody else goes after the debt.
Yeah.
But if we took the government out of that equation.
Oh, yeah. The students wouldn't get loans in the first place, which would probably adjust the cost of education.
You know what? We'd have more blue-collar workers, and we'd have less problems with college education price. And I'm sure that there won't be anyone in the comments that disagrees with that.
I don't know. I mean, it's like a plumber can make as much money as me, and I had to waste the better part of a day arguing with somebody that something that was not going right on a web page was a bug in Chrome. And I was like, here's the bug tracker on the Chrome mailing list that shows that this is slated to be included in a bug fix in Chrome 89, which is not out yet.
Well, I'm sure plumbers have a lot of arguments about
I'd
what's
say
going on.
Yeah, but it's
my family is plumbers, and like they often argue not necessarily with the client, but with the other tradespeople on a job site about how things should be done.
Right before they pull the rolled up sock out of the line, and they're like, "Oh, well, you were saying it was something else, right?" No.
I had enough of that the other day. Ooh.
Oh yeah, has the cookie place had a river of literal shit roll through it anymore?
Everything has been magical, like all the rains and the water, and it's just like that torrential rain that we had. It was handled no problem.
Have you had any cookies?
No, I haven't had any cookies.
Are you ever going to go back?
It's questionable.
There were some good cookies.
They are good cookies.
They're overpriced and possibly filled with feces, but they're so good.
I only just got the clean out fixed, so the clean out is now sealed. It's nice.
All right, well,
We'll see you tomorrow with more stuff.
it's going to be business and something.
Something. Oh.
We'll see you tomorrow.